I can start. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, we are recording. So I want to get it on record that I said thank you so much for this opportunity and for organizing this conference. I'm really glad to be with you all today. And for those of you who know what it's like to pursue a dream and then reach it, well, today is like that for me. And so, speaking of dreams, the research I'm about to share with you is just that, right? I have a personal mantra that guides my journey as an educator, and it is to sow seeds of light so that children, young and old, can grow and manifest their dreams. So today, I'm going to be sowing a few seeds with you. Um, and with that, in those seeds, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, I'm going to tell you a story, just a little bit about me. We're going to talk about compassion fatigue. Like, what is it? What does it look like? Who experiences? Who's most likely to get it? Some information around the research. We're going to talk a little bit about self-care. Not self-care and like, oh, yes, I know I'm supposed to take care of myself. But think about it like it's your medicine. It's the thing you need to do on a daily basis for your health to remain well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about keep learning, because that's one huge strategy to ensure that you actually continue to love education and the profession. And then, of course, stay in touch. So I'll give you some info to contact me. And in a little bit, there's going to be a link in the chat that will have all the resources and everything that I've talked about today, including the slides. You can access all of it, and they'll share that with you. But for now, if it's okay, I'd like to tell you a little story. So, okay, we're good. I can't see if everybody's giving me reactions, but I'm hoping that's okay. All right. So, school was my safe haven. I loved going to school. I mean, learning, tutoring, helping my teachers after school. You nod your head if any of that sounds familiar to you. And even teaching my friends on the weekend in my garage. And I included assigning them like homework and then detention when they missed it. A homework assignment. That was me, right? I loved my teachers so much that I wanted to be just like them when I grew up. I wanted to teach. And so that's what I did. And as I look back on my life now, I know also that school was and always will be an escape for me. At school, it was warm. At school, there was food, right? At school, I was safe. And so when I entered the teaching profession, I wanted to provide a safe space for my students, just as my teachers did for me. And I did that for a long time until I realized that becoming an administrator meant that I could provide a safe space for hundreds of more students than just those I was fortunate enough to have as students in the classroom. And so I jumped at that chance to make the switch. But as I moved up and took on more responsibility, the experiences I had with students as a teacher and then as an administrator began to take their toll. Their trauma was triggering me in ways I didn't understand at the time. I mean, there were days, kid you not, my hands would like shake, literally. Or I'd be driving to work in tears, or I'd drive home from work. So I'm crying on my way to work, put on a brave face, go through the day, and then I come home and I'm driving on the way home. Or I'd be laying awake at night, worried and unable to sleep. There was even one time I lost a lot of weight. Yeah, right? And I started to dread going to work. I mean, the school climate no longer felt safe. And the things some of my students were experiencing at times were gut wrenching. And the interactions sometimes with some of the colleagues and parents left a lot to be desired. But I kept at it because, like it says, teaching is like a superpower, right? There was also joy, lots of joy, seeing the light bulbs going off in my students' head when they grasped a difficult math concept. Yay, math teacher. Or seeing my teachers working really hard to make instruction academically engaging and fun from bell to bell. And I kept at it until I couldn't anymore. And in 2012, for a number of reasons, professionally, but mostly personally. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I had to take time off from work to heal. I needed to. And ultimately, I made the decision not to return to the school site. And I felt, and I still firmly believe that students thrive best when they're in the midst of healthy, happy, whole adults. And that was no longer me at the time. But I knew I still wanted to make a difference. And that is why I moved to education at the state level. So I used to work at the California Department of Education. And, imagining all the millions of students I could help, then I think California is now 5.9 million students statewide. And along the healing journey, I came across the term compassion fatigue, the physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion that comes from working with people who are in constant states of trauma or distress. And I noticed that when I came across that term, I always saw it in the context of caregivers or helping professionals like social workers, therapists, first responders, nurses, but not in the teaching profession, not with teachers or administrators, as if educators aren't helping professionals. Just saying. And the symptoms, there's some, we'll talk more about it, but it included some of which included depression, trouble sleeping, apathy, loss of interest in others. It immediately resonated with me. And I wondered if it had anything to do with my departure from direct student service. And so I also wondered, is that responsible for other teachers leaving the profession? In particular, like urban high poverty schools, because that's my heart. That's where I wanted to be. It was so important for me. And so what ended up happening is I noticed that some of the other symptoms were that there were, when an organization level, like a system, like a school system or a hospital or, police, social workers, things like that, when compassion fatigue hits the system, you're going to see like a lot of chronic absenteeism and high turnover rates. And that sounded like the teaching profession. So when I made the decision, because, to get my doctorate, I shared this idea of compassion fatigue affecting teachers, and that it might be one unaddressed cause for the teacher shortage. And it always resonated with people. And so that's what I studied. I knew I had to study it. Eureka, I found it. Any math teachers out there will know where this comes from, right? Put his name in the chat. Eureka, I found it. Anyway, just nerding out for a moment. But back to what I was saying. So I knew I had to study that. And so that's what I did. I set out to explore to what extent California teachers experience compassion fatigue and how does it impact their perceptions of the school's climate and their working conditions. But most importantly, what supports could be put in place to help. And so we're going to just pause briefly. I want to do a little bit of teaching here, just a little learning around what is compassion fatigue. So I'm going to talk about that. But I wanted to say that I learned a few things along the way, and I'm going to share that with you now. But it's not as a deterrent, but more as a cautionary tale. Don't let what happened to me happen to you, right? You're at the beginning of your journey. And I just wished if someone had told me that this was a possibility, I would have been better equipped to deal with it while I was in the midst of it. You know what I mean? Like, just give me a heads up. And this is what I am doing for you now. Because on the real, we need you. You are important. Our students need you. And they may not always say it, and they might actually never say it. Like, I just want to throw it out there. But it doesn't mean that you don't matter. You matter, just like my teachers mattered to me. And just like they probably mattered for you, which is why you're even here. So there are a lot of findings, but I'm only going to talk about just a couple in particular, I think, that are important. So the compassion fatigue, the way that I studied it is from Barbara Stam, and she imagines it as burnout and secondary trauma combined, right? It's not one or the other. It's the combination of both of those things that leads to compassion fatigue. So you get this physical, emotional, mental exhaustion that comes from working with people who are in constant states of distress. They might be experiencing trauma, but you're not. right? I think about secondary, I'll kind of give you an example of what I mean. But for burnout, uh, I think everybody kind of has an idea of what burnout is, but it's like when you are feeling emotionally or depleted or drained after a long period of work-related stress. It's just a lot of stuff going on in work, right? And it usually has three parts or manifests in three ways. Emotional exhaustion, like you might hear people talk about, oh, I'm so over this. They're like over it, right? Depersonalization, right? Like trying to kind of put on a shield, like you're just not caring as much. You're kind of distancing yourself, not because you don't want to care, but it's more like a self-protection, right? And then this idea of reduced personal accomplishment, like feeling like you're not doing all that you could do, right? And so that's kind of what burnout is. And I want you to think about, we're going to talk about that in the context of teachers in a minute. Now, secondary trauma, this arises from being exposed to a traumatizing event from like assisting someone who's traumatized. You're not actually experiencing the trauma necessarily, someone else is, but you're working so closely with them. So I think about George Floyd. When George Floyd was murdered, and remember during the pandemic, we all witnessed it and we all saw it. We weren't the ones experiencing that trauma, but it took an emotional toll. Think about it like that, right? So if you've got students that are going through things and you're working with them, and you're trying to support them, that maybe their traumas are impacting you. So that's kind of what compassion fatigue looks like, right? So those are the definitions. What I was noticing in reading it, who's most likely to experience it? If someone has trauma in their own life. Remember how I was telling you my story that the student's trauma triggered my own? I went through some stuff. Who has it, right? Like who hasn't gone through some things as a child or younger, those ACEs, right? But because of that, it kind of made me a little bit more susceptible to it. So if you're someone like that, just be mindful of that. If you don't have like a way of, it says lack of mindfulness or spiritual practice. What I mean by this is, do you have an outlet that helps you find peace, helps you find joy, helps you relax? If you don't tend to have that, you could be susceptible to it. Some of you, like if you have large caseload, huge numbers of people that you're working with, does that sound like teachers? Like students, right? Maybe if you're experiencing burnout, compassion satisfaction is interesting. That's what it means, liking and feeling effective at your job. But what they're saying is, if you're like this in doing something that means so much to you, you're like so into it, it's so important, you like might tend to be a little bit more like really getting like just deep in the trenches at that work. And then the thing that also got me was that females, if you're a woman or you identify as a woman, more susceptible. So when I started to look at the teaching profession, knowing that the majority of teachers are women, right? And just thinking about some of the conditions, it's like, hold on, we need to ring the bell. We need to tell people that this might be a possibility. The other thing I noticed, and this is from the research, in the study, if you're working at high poverty schools, you might be more likely to experience burnout or secondary trauma. And think about, let's just pause here for a second. Secondary trauma, remember how I explained it's like, it's maybe not you experiencing it, but you're working with someone who is experiencing trauma. Think about the population at high poverty schools. Tend to be students of color, African American, Latinx, lots of trauma in those populations. So it makes sense, right? That we're understanding this, but no one ever told me that. And I'm like, can you just do me the solid and the favor of giving me a heads up? So I just want you to know, like, I want you to be mindful of that. When I looked after the pandemic, like this right here, what it was saying, let me go back one more thing I forgot to mention. What I noticed, there was a statistically significant difference. So if you worked at a high poverty school, you were much more likely to kind of experience some symptoms of compassion fatigue compared to not working at a high poverty school. right? Statistically significant meant that there, it was just much more likely, right? But after the pandemic, right, I looked at compassion fatigue after the pandemic, and what I noticed that the school side didn't matter anymore. During the pandemic, everyone was feeling the burnout and feeling the secondary trauma. But the interesting thing here is that compassion satisfaction was higher, right? And compassion satisfaction, remember I said, it's that love and that joy of teaching, maybe like feeling like you're making a difference. And the only thing I can attribute this to, or one of the things I was thinking about, was during the pandemic, people knew, they knew that they mattered, right? I remember those videos during the pandemic where you would see people trying to do their work and they've got their kids like tied up behind them in the back or something like that, because they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize how important teachers were, how important school was. We totally needed them. We totally need you, right? And I think people had a lot more love and reverence for us. Of course, unfortunately, we might have gone down now, but at least, you know, that seemed to make sense. But what it was also showing me, and what it's also saying, is that it's also saying that we need to make sure that moving forward, no matter what, anybody who's entering this profession, anybody who's already in the profession, we need to be talking to them about these things, because it's a real possibility. We don't want people to leave because of it. The other thing that I did notice is that if you're a teacher who's been teaching for less than 5 years, so if you're a newbie, right, there's a possibility that you might experience compassion fatigue, right? So newbies, how many of you actually, I can't really see everybody, but how many are newbies here and here? Can you like just at least do like a Zoom reaction or something so I can see?
3 so
One?
4.
How many do we got?
I'm seeing about 5. They're popping in and out. It's hard to count them.
Okay. So for you all, like, this is something to be mindful of. Now I'm talking a lot about what it is, right? I want to give you like a little bit more insight into actually what it might manifest as and what it could look like. But before I do that, I'm gonna ask a question, and I'm just gonna ask you to kind of like put some thoughts in the chat. What's moving in you? Like, as I've been sharing for a little bit, when I say what's moving in you, what are you thinking about? Are you noticing any feelings, thoughts, insights in your body, or what's popping into mind? So if you could just type that in the chat, I'd love to see that. What's moving in you? Anything resonating? Hmm. 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 Yeah. I'm just pausing here. I'm actually kind of reading through some of the chat, and I just want to say thank you for that. I also want you to like just know, like, you can interact, and there'll be time for questions a little bit, but there's a little bit more teaching I want to do here. Yeah, sounds like this is like resonating, right, with folks. On the link on the resource list that Tony or Anthony was putting in the chat for you all, or Tracy, I don't know who did. You want to pop it in again? There are some resources, right? Shout out to ProQual, which is the professional quality of life. They have some amazing self-care tools. And I took this from there, and I'm citing the source here. because it's an exhaustive list of what it could look like. I want you to look at the categories though. If you're experiencing compassion fatigue, it can impact your mental health, but it also can impact you physically, emotionally, behaviorally. It could be work related. It can even be spiritual, right? So remember when I was talking about the crying and the weight loss and, you know, just feeling like the tiredness that happens. Behavioral. Honestly, one of the biggest things that I noticed with the teachers was the irritability. Like if you're a caregiver, even during the pandemic where you were feeling like just emotionally exhausted, anybody a little bit more crabby and snappy with people that you worked with or your family or friends? Imagine a crabby, snappy teacher with our beautiful babies, right? They deserve better than that. It's not your fault. I want people to know it's not your fault. This could be a thing that's happening to you, right? So it's definitely not your fault, but it is something to notice. The other thing that I'm looking up here, where it says like work related, you know, some of the folks when I was doing the research, they would talk about like taking mental health days, taking a day off, calling off sick because they just couldn't do it, even though they weren't necessarily like physically out of it, right? So we had a lot of chronic absenteeism. Or anybody ever have teachers who always seem to have a substitute, like they were never there? Yeah. So when so here is just some of those things. I'm curious, is any of this ever happened to you at all? Like, look at this list. Any lists like resonate with you or connect with you? Like, have you experienced any of these things? Like what? All of it. Wow. What else? I'm curious. Just go ahead and type in the chat other things that might be resonating there. And I think it's important, like, I'm pausing here because I actually want you to go through the list. I want you to just take a moment to like think, what would be something that has happened to me? I think during the pandemic, not me necessarily, like I know some friends though who like from the behavioral side started to hit things a little harder than they normally would. More wine, more whatever, right? There are folks who there was one who shared that she started to procrastinate. Yeah, I said, so the word is procrastinating. That's what she called it. Just putting off work and like baking and eating a little more and anything just to kind of like stave off the stress.
Jacquelyn, can I chime in for a second?
Sure.
I've been a teacher for a really, really long time. And after the pandemic, like you were saying, I'm looking at all of these. And yes, as teachers, we go through the physical and we go through the emotional and we go through behavioral and we go through work related, all of those symptoms of fatigue. But one of the ones that I personally went through after COVID was that spiritual of, why am I doing this? This is so hard. It is so hard to be a teacher to, you know, just in this today's society, today's times, going through what our kids were going through. And I don't think we talk about that enough, that yeah, as humans, we go through all of these symptoms, but just in dealing with the fact that we are caregivers, that we are professional caregivers, we can lose our I don't want to say our passion, but you know, kind of like our path of why am I continuing to do this? Because teaching is just downright hard.
It is. And you know, Monica, thank you for sharing that. It can. And I think like what's important for me in what you said and what everyone should know is, yes, it can be difficult, right? But it's like you have this thing that you love, and then all of a sudden you're in the space and like, what happened? I don't understand it. And I think that's the part that always tends to break my heart. Like, if someone had just told me what this was about, I could have prepared myself. I could have been like ready to work through it and address it. And Because well, everything I know about teachers, we're smart people, right? We're smart enough to teach another subject to other people. So we're gonna prepare, we're gonna like put our tools up, develop our skills. So what I'm encouraging you all is to kind of like remember to prepare and do this for yourself. This is just another part of your learning that should be part of your journey. What I wanted to show here is that these are some of the things that teachers describe. So of those lists that I just shared with you, like there were things like the feeling like a failure, right? Who wants to feel like they're not, there was like a huge guilt that would come with like feeling this way and you want to do the best for your kids and you're not able to show up in the way that you need to. So what I think I would, so we've kind of like, I wanted to like just spend a little bit of time talking about what it looks like, what it feels like, what were some of the data, but now I want to talk a little bit about what you can do, right? Okay, so what can we do? So I think we'll come back to the connect the thoughts in a minute because we just did some of that. So what I would like for us to think about is how do you address compassion fatigue? So we're going to pause here just for a second. I want everybody to get their phones out. Scan that little tool. Let me do it with you. I actually kind of want to remember what I should know. Just look it up. Yes. These are just some ideas around the tool. It actually can be printed. It's a little card that you print and put either in your wallet, by your desk, wherever you need to as a reminder. Like I have things that I have right next to my desk. And I'm looking at one of the tools that says opposite action. Right. So what I'm thinking about, like, I want to snap or something, not that I would, but if I ever wanted to, I'm gonna do the opposite. It's like my reminder. So I would like for you all to do that. But I also want you all to know that it's okay to feel your feelings. Things are going to come up, and how you feel, it's valid, right? And you need to, one of the things that it tends to do, like from the social aspect, it's like you withdraw. You don't want to be around as many people, or you're trying to distance yourself as a self-protection. But you need to share. You got to do the opposite. You need to speak up and ask for help if you need it. What you're going to find most of the time is that you're not alone. There are other people who are experiencing that. They just like, no one ever like gave them permission to talk about it. So I'm giving you permission. Speak up. We have to attend to your mental and physical health. We're going to talk a little bit about, I remember I mentioned early on that self-care is medicine. There's a video, I don't think I put it on here, but I'm going to tell you about it now. It's called My Year of Mindfulness. My Year of Mindfulness. And in there, this woman, she has lupus. She was just tired of taking all this medication. She was trying to find another way to get better. But one of the things that she did was she did a meditation every day. And she started to think about it as her medicine, because as she did that, she started to heal and to feel better. And to just, her life was better. Her outlook was better. I'm not saying meditation has to be the thing that you do, but the idea was that she started to think about it like medicine. You have to take a pill every day, right? Some of us do, to help us heal. We do it because we know our body needs it. Teachers, mental health, self-care is something you need. So just think about what is something that you could do on a daily, 3 days a week, at least, as like like thinking about it as your medicine. And then stay connected with the community. Like, do you have a community? People you can talk to. If you don't, got to build one, right? Because these are the types of things that are going to help you stave off compassion fatigue. So remember when I was saying that that comprehensive list of the compassion fatigue symptoms had like behavioral, social, spiritual, at work. Well, when you're thinking about your self-care, try to think about it in those same categories. So here are some examples. Here are some examples of like things that you could do. Like, what's a spiritual activity that nurtures your spirit? I actually like to journal, like to write while I'm listening to music. And it doesn't have to be just classical or instrumental. It could be your favorite song. Just have it on in the background when you're writing, right? Practical, like emotional things, like, oh, he's not in here. I have a coworker. It's a little dog who's always present with me, and that helps me stay connected. Another thing you can do is, Sarah or Tracy mentioned the TEDx talk. I asked people to watch that and then talk about it, right? Like, could be a TEDx, it could be a book, could be an article, just whatever you can think of to kind of help yourself stay, to be mindful of yourself and your own health. So, let's just put in the chat just a couple moments. What are some things, recommendations for self-care that you might tend to use? Oh, I see Calm app. I see the Calm app in there. That's a great one. I think Headspace also has Head Start's preschool, sorry. Headspace has something that is free for educators. So what else could you do? I'm curious. What can you do for your own self-care? Let's put that in the chat. I mean, while you're learning too, like what else could you do? Maybe what might you be able to do at work? Yeah. Lots of stuff going on in the chat, and I want you to like take a look at each other. You see how when you start to talk about it, there's all these ideas, there's a wealth of knowledge, but you don't know that unless you speak up. And compassion fatigue might make you not want to speak up. You're gonna have to fight that and do the opposite action, do the opposite of that. When it's telling you to pull away, lean in, lean in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch gears because this is the other seed, the last seed I wanted to share with you, right? And this one is around your professional quality of life. Teachers are professionals. You are professionals. You're brilliant. You have a ton of school. I don't know how many, we make teachers jump through a lot of hoops. Highly educated people, right? And so research shows that staying in the profession, remaining in the profession is really linked to having a great pre-service preparation. So your teacher preparation program being awesome. But you know the other thing that does it? Engaging in continuous learning, right? The kind of learning that like builds your practice, continues to remind you how awesome you are or how awesome teaching is, right? So that deep, reflective practice. And so I would like to say and encourage you all to try national board certification, right? And research shows that for teachers who kind of go through this, and let me just move that up. I think my Zoom, there it is. Okay. For teachers who are going through this national board certification, what we find is that, oh, hi everybody, I think you can see my screen. Sorry, just trying to, there we go. What you find is that this type of professional development and a nationally board certified teacher, you tend to be much, it's associated with better student academic outcomes when compared with teachers who are not. You're just like it's the gold standard of teaching. You're just a much better teacher, right? And it stimulates changes in your practice. So teachers who go through national board certification report improvements in their performance, in their planning, their designing, the delivering of instruction, managing the classroom. I mean, class management is a huge thing. How you evaluate and diagnose student learning. And then, of course, this idea of doing it and participating in the learning community. Now, the reason why I think this is so huge, and one of the things that we do at CREEO, which is a brand new research center at UC Berkeley, it stands for the Center for Research on Expanding Educational Opportunity. The reason why it's so huge is because we are doing this work with a diverse teaching population who tend to work at like high poverty schools, because our students deserve the best. You're the best. Our students deserve the best teachers who are healthy, who are happy, who are whole, and who are really, I'm going to use the word, damn good at their jobs, right? So I wanted to show you here, just briefly, I'm going to show a little bit of this video, and it's just kind of explain some of our work. And I'm going to stop it right at the point where, right after the first teacher kind of explains what national board certification has done for them. So let's just listen in here briefly.
We're here to celebrate teachers who are pursuing board certification. We're here to celebrate teachers and high quality teaching. National board certification is the gold standard in teacher certification. And this project aims to give teachers this gold standard certification and place them in schools with children who have historically had the least.
So I just want to, first of all, congratulate all of the educators, and I'm very excited to be a part of this journey as they're pursuing national board certification. It is a very rigorous process, and they're very selfless on what they're doing, because not only are they bettering their craft, but they're also making an impact on the students that they're serving. And it really goes back into that whole circle, holistic effort and collective impact that we're also hoping to do for the community. And at CREEO, we really want to empower everyone that's a part of this journey. And at the end of the day, while we're the catalysts, the real drivers are the educators.
I think I learned a lot about how to show up every single day in a way that was deeply intentional. I think teaching can be a profession that you can sort of do the day in, day out if it gets to that point. You know, you can show up, read the curriculum, and just leave it at that. This process really taught me and pushed me to be intentional about what I'm teaching and why I'm teaching, and sort of the impact beyond whatever's the lesson of the day.
Okay, so you can, that is linked to the, on the resource list, but you can see that, as assuming the teachers were talking, they were talking about this kind of professional development that like really pushes them to think about their teaching and whether or not they're doing a really good job of it. And that kind of work is self-actualizing, right? Because it takes you from this level of, yeah, this is what I do for a living, to this, oh my God, I'm amazing at this job and I feel fulfilled and really, right? And the cool thing about it, like we support people here at UC Berkeley to do this. We do it with a lot of great, amazing partners. Especially for right now, we have looking at different partnerships, but there's some funding out there for us to help folks in Oakland. Just started our second cohort there. And then also there's another one in the middle here. You see there's a California Black Educator Initiative. But for any teacher who works at a high priority school, one thing that California has done, which I just want to spend a moment here talking about this, is that they're going to pay. They will pay. So when we're talking about remaining, another thing that research shows that helps is being paid what you're worth, right? Getting that extra funding. So what California has going on right now for anyone who does this is there's a $2,500 stipend to support national board certification. It costs $1,900 to become nationally certified right now. So if you notice, the money is $2,500. So they'll cover it and give you a little bit of extra just in case you needed to retake a component or maintain it. And then there's the incentive. Teachers at high priority schools will receive an additional $5,000 a year in their pay if they become nationally board certified. Hello, I'll take that. Like, where was that for me? I want that. And then oftentimes your school district, wherever you end up working, they give an additional pay for national board certified teachers. And I think that the teaching workforce should reflect the diversity of the students that they're teaching. So I think as many people who can become nationally board certified, that you definitely want to do this. But it's mostly about this idea of doing what you need to do to continue to build your professional quality of life. So if we want to recap, what I talked to you about was, remember, be mindful of compassion fatigue and what it looks like in your own space. Remember to think about your self-care as medicine, as something that you need to do on a daily because it's just what's good for you, right? And it's going to help. And then always attend to your professional quality of life. Lastly, I'm super excited about this. I wrote a book about it. It's short. It's not a very long book, but I would appreciate your love and support and tell people about it. If you enjoyed what I talked about or shared, share it with people so they can learn as well, right? Because the mission, remember what I said, was to sow seeds of light so that everyone will learn about this, so that you get that heads up so that you can stay in the profession. Lastly, if you want to connect, I would love to talk, and we would love to talk. So here's our email at CREEO. Just email, you can reach me there. There's our website. We're on LinkedIn. And if you want to reach out to me personally or connect with me, then, hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email with the CREEO. So with that, Tracy, I am going to stop there and turn it back over to you. I have time for questions if that's what you would like to do, but
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much. This was so fun. And maybe that's not the right word. It is fun though, because it feels like, knowledge is power, and understanding the ways that these cycles can play out, and understanding what we can do for ourselves and for our students to integrate this into all our teacher training. And I mean, it's really exciting to feel like there's some, really powerful supports for students. And it made me think a lot about communities. I posted in the chat, I hope people come to the apprenticeship session on Saturday, because apprenticeships are, part of what we do is build community, and we're about supporting students and it's free tuition. So there's financial supports as well as the community supports as they're on their way to transfer. And hopefully someday we'll have some BA apprenticeships too that pay for the BA. That's our vision. It's a tuition-free streamlined pathway. We're working towards it. So all across the Bay. But yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting. So do folks have questions? Things you'd like to talk about? If you post in the chat, I can ask your question, or you could just come off mute and ask a question.
Or if you'd like to share a comment as well. I'm imagining, just like Monica shared earlier, there's something that resonated, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.